The World Bank economic update for Sierra Leone will directly affect local councils to increase pressure to meet revenue targets, ongoing support for revenue mobilization strategies and challenges related to national fiscal stability and climate change. The economic update says council must align their local strategies with national reforms while facing potential cuts in central government funding and dealing with broader economy headwinds. This morning, to talk about this, among other things, we have the Freetown Mayor, Worship Yvonne Akisoya. Good morning, Madam Mayor.
Good morning, Remy. Good morning, viewers. Good to be here.
Yes, and happy Christmas in advance.
Thank you, Remy. Happy Christmas to you too. Although there isn't much sign of Christmas festivities in this country at the moment.
Yes, but what council is doing in terms of, are you guys planning to do some beautification in the city to ensure we started feeling the festive season? I know there are sometimes young people who took upon themselves to do some painting.
Well, they don't take upon themselves. We actually paid to get that work done.
Ah, okay.
Yes, to paint the curbs, the sidewalks, just to lift the city. But we're talking this morning about the economic situation. Yeah. And you've got to actually prioritize. We're looking at it, but the resources aren't there at the moment, so I don't want to make any promises.
I know.
But one thing that we will hopefully be able to do is some beautification around the cotton tree. It will be our Christmas tree this season. We hope it will be done before Christmas, and if not, it'll certainly come into the new year.
Yeah, I know. I also must commend you and the team council for a job well done. The cleaning exercise is going on across Freetown. It makes it look beautiful again, after a long time.
And I mean, Remy, thank you for that. This is actually something that I'm going to be speaking to Freetonians to camera on later today. I'm actually going to do a video because in as much as we have, 800 people sweeping the streets, we're seeing an increasing trend of, and in as much as we are encouraging Freetonians to use the approved service provider, we're seeing an increasing trend of the kush addicts being utilized by residents and having those bags of garbage littered everywhere. I just took a picture of one opposite St. Anthony's Church.
Yeah, even in front of Mewavi towards Battle Street.
Right.
Yeah.
And yesterday we, about 4 of them were arrested because I called an emergency meeting of our Met Police, the commissioner, and his team, and the sanitation team on Monday, because everywhere I went along Wilkins Road, Congo Cross, this garbage is not. This garbage is being put there. It's being put there, and it's being put there with the acquiescence, with the how will I say, with the blessing of our residents. Because when you give your garbage, as we've said to you many times, if you give your garbage to somebody who's on foot, walking with a bag, and I know that garbage is not going to the dump site. That garbage is going to the road. And we've actually decided to remove the dustbins, the trash cans, which are for street litter, because they've become a magnet for people to put their household waste. But, we came to talk about how the economy, the economic situation is impacting. But, there's so many angles. And one thing that I'll point out, obviously, this Kush crisis is a failure. It's a failure of government. We are not the only country in West Africa with a high percentage of young people. Why is it that we are the country that is now making the headlines? We are the country that is now the passageway, the hub for narcotics, getting this terrible international reputation, but also this terrible loss of life, and seeing this phenomenon of clean salon is a direct there's a direct correlation. These guys are looking for the next 20,000 to go buy their next fix. And it's compounded with the fact that the population, I mean, I was saying to someone the other day that, you know, the population is growing astronomically. That is fact. And the census, which has just been launched, will prove that. The population in Freetown, it did not decrease by 42% in 2021. And certainly the numbers in 2026 will confirm the estimates that the World Bank has projected, which is that this city's population is going to be 2 million by 2028. And let me hasten to add, when a population increases, dividing the city into two does not make the population smaller. It does not address the issues. The issues are decentralization issues. The issues are devolution issues. The issues are national policy issues. Because what we should be having is investment outside of Freetown. Urbanization is a phenomenon, it's a trend that is happening globally. If I could just land on this, what is expected of government is for them to ensure that that decentralization, that urbanization is spread around the country, that you have urban nodes in different parts of the country. Everything isn't concentrated in just the capital city.
Yeah, but I think government is defending, saying that it's important, even though, like what you said, the population is keep increasing, and Freetown, their tendency for us to reach 2 million. But government is saying that because of the distance of people, it will be good, you know, for us to have some stopping points. Like, for example, you cannot come from Gorich, you know, to the central part of Freetown to do like immigration issue, you know, stopping.
But that's not a local council. That's not a local council. That's not a local council function.
That's their defense.
But it doesn't make any sense.
Even local tax as well, you know.
Well, it doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
If you're talking about, look, Freetown has, you're saying Godrich to Freetown. It's 82 square kilometers. The average size of other districts is 2,500 square kilometers is the average size of the remaining 21 districts outside of Freetown. So if you're talking about distance being a challenge where you only have 82 square kilometers, let's reframe that, because that argument doesn't make sense. But what also is very critical in this conversation is that when it comes to decentralization, before we come on to the economic outlook,
yes, I know.
let me quickly take a moment to explain what the connection is between the two. Because one would say, why does Mayor want to speak about the World Bank's report on the national economy? How unconcerned? Well, we are concerned because we are part of this national economy. We operate within the context of the national economy as local councils, not just myself, or not just Freetown City Council, but indeed all 22 councils in the country. And in operating within that context, it's important for us then to understand what is happening and what the relationship is from a perspective of financial engagement. And it's simple. The notion of local governments is in order for the central government to devolve certain functions to the subnational government, which is closer to the people. There are more of them. There's one central government, unless you're in a federal system where you have the federal states and then you have the central government, and that even in those settings, beneath the state, they have more subnational, which tends to be the districts and the cities. So you've got that devolution. You should have that devolution. What does that mean again? It means some functions, key functions, operational functions, things like health, things like education, things like sanitation, waste management, you know, very sort of hands-on operational functions are, and of course, land use. Land use. How is the land use used? Where are things built? Because it's all integrated, right? Because if you are going to be responsible for removing waste, then you need to be sure that you also are able to access properties. If you're going to be responsible for ensuring that we preserve, you know, green spaces and so forth, you have to make sure that you have the power to stop people from building in those spaces. So that's the link. When you talk about decentralization, and this is where the argument of just dividing the city makes no sense, because when you talk about decentralization, what you're talking about is not smaller units, but taking the power from the center to the local. And in this case, in Sierra Leone's case, sadly, we haven't done that very well. That notwithstanding,
But devolution, you know, it's you know, some other day I was actually talking to some friends, and they were telling me that it's going to be more power, you know, more burden on council, because currently council is still struggling to get the manpower to do certain things.
So sorry. Give me an example of what will be the burden. Give me an example.
Like for example, you made mention about sanitation issues around building permits.
Great.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah.
So first of all, let's now we've begun to understand, because you've said it's more burden. But what you haven't said is that what devolution means is you not only devolve the function, but you also devolve the resources. Why? Because central governments are the institution, is the unit, is the entity leading the country that collects the taxes of the country. So you collect GST, you collect customs and excise, you collect PAYE, you collect road maintenance. All of these, the taxes, when it comes to minerals tax, when it comes to our resources across the country, the collector is the government. Wait, let's come to this. Let's come to this. You know, I really wanted to have this conversation because there's such a misconception about this. There's such a narrative which is so wrong. So this morning I thought, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to make sure that we look at what is the global best practice. What happens in the rest of the world? Sierra Leone is not living in Mars. We're not in Mars. We're in this earth. You know, we're part of the United Nations, we're members of, you know, the World Bank, we're part of ECOWAS, we're part of a global system. And the things that happen globally are what we can make reference to in terms of understanding what works and how is this thing perceived. Sierra Leone is not a special case. When we talk about decentralization, there are laid down academic, empirical studies, research, evidence, reports. I mean, at the time, just a few months ago when the debate was quite energized around these very, very inappropriate and doomed to failure plans to split the city, one of the things that I did was to actually send the plan to the Center for African Cities, which is in the University of Cape Town. So when we talk about this, we're not talking about us sitting in Sierra Leone and just saying, and I saw we did do We can do that, and in fact, in a way, we do that, but we can also make reference to what happens globally. So, let me tell you, around the world, the average disbursement of fiscal transfers from central governments to local governments is 52%. So the revenue of councils in different countries, and I'll actually have a little breakdown here that I can share with viewers. So nationally across the world, it is 50%, 52% of what local governments receive from the national governments in terms of their budget. In the OECD, these are the developed countries, industrialized countries, it's approximately 43%. In the European OECDs, the European countries, it's 49.8%, that's 50%, 49.8, 50%. In the US, it's roughly 37%. In the United Kingdom, it's 67%. So the revenue that the councils work with. Because when you say you also collect revenue, know that the expectation is not that the councils are going to be able to do everything with the revenue they collect. Whilst I was in the UK just a couple of days ago.
But comparing those countries to Sierra Leone, Sierra Leone is a very low income country.
Exactly, which is precisely why. Let me give you the sub-Saharan African countries. The sub-Saharan African countries, for example, Uganda, 88%. Botswana, rural councils, 92%. So this is in South Africa, depending on the municipality, on average 53.9%. So even in sub-Saharan Africa, it's more, not less. It's more, not less. And why? Because of the very point you made. Because of the very point that when you're in a low resource environment, the dependency of on the council, the ability for the council to mobilize that resource on their own is lower. Now, the submission I'm wanting you to understand is, number one, the context of decentralization comes with devolution, not just of the functions, but also of the resources. Globally, this is about 52%. In the UK, I was in the UK just a couple of days ago. I was passing through. I was in Ireland for an event and passed through. I was listening to the radio in the vehicle going to the airport, and I heard something that made me just go, hey, yeah. What did I hear? I heard an announcement that in the budget, the government's budget, that they were going to be giving billions of pounds to local councils across the country to fill potholes, for make the road, they're holding at the road to fill potholes, and that they would be getting more revenue based on the performance. That is over and above what the councils are themselves generating. And each of those councils generates council tax. They have property rate, which is the council tax. They do land use planning. They do building permits. They do road. They are able to get funds from street parking, from a host of different fees and charges, which they have access to. But that does not mean that the government does not support.
I know, but there are so many ways council can make money.
I want you to listen.
I'm listening.
I want you to listen. Now we're coming to how does that connect with the update? How does it connect? So let's be very clear. The purpose of this conversation is to do a couple of things. One, I want there to be an appreciation and understanding that the notion that councils, because council collects money, that means council can do everything without support from the central government is fallacious. And that doesn't hold anywhere in the world.
I
in
agree
fact,
with you,
here
because
in Sierra Leone,
Matthew Dingy was here, and he also commended your councils.
Yes. But let me tell you,
for putting strategies in place in terms of...
But I want you to understand that our strategies are within the national context.
Okay.
Hear me. Hear me and hear me well. Okay? If you are the owner of a house, you're the father, you bring income in, and you give allowances to all your kids. And you say to your kids, now, I want you to go and do some, bobby jobs. Go and raise some money yourself, okay? But the dad is the one who provides the allowance and also ensures that the kids have clothes, that the house is functioning, that there's food. If the provision at the household level is stopped, the ability for the child to go out and actually generate their revenue is not completely stopped, but it's hampered. And that's the analogy I want us to get. This is what I want us to understand. So let me come to, I thank Matthew Dingy. He is, I know that the Ministry of Finance would have loved to have done more. But the reality is, and this is what I want to come to, 52% globally. In Sierra Leone, the average council relies on government for 80 to 90% of their revenue. I don't know if FS said that yesterday. He's written it in a letter to the councils, so it's factual and it's in the public domain. The average council, Freetown City Council, 23 to 25% of our revenue comes from the central government. Can you see that? So the average council, 80 to 90% of their revenue comes from the central government. Freetown City Council, 23 to 25% of our revenue comes from the central government. What does that mean? It means we're raising money. It means we're working. It means we have those strategies and they're effective. But that does not take away two things. One, we are stretching. In the global context, we should get more. What goes to councils overall in this country in terms of a percentage of GDP is 0.1% of the entire GDP. If you say the local councils are there to implement on the ground on behalf of government, we are there, we're the closest to the people, we are there to execute. 0.1% of the government's GDP is what comes to local councils. I'm here today to say that that is not enough. But I'm also here to say that we are concerned. I better not speak on behalf of everybody else. I'm here to say that I am concerned because we're not working in a vacuum. We're not working in a vacuum. The reason you have devolution to councils, the reason you have that funding is because you're going to need to ensure that the local councils can do what governments are unable to do themselves because their hands don't reach everywhere. Unfortunately, in our situation, our government tends to monopolize this, to monopolize the functions. But let me say now what's happened. If you look at the budget for 2020...
You mean 2026 budget?
No, I'm looking at the 2025 budget because I'm telling you what's gone on.
Okay.
If you look at the budget for 2025, we had a budget, and I'm going to just go to what was in the budget for 2025 for local councils, the actual figure. Let me give you that. So, local councils, there we go. The actual that was dispersed to local councils in I won't go upside down. The act that was dispersed to local councils in 2024 was the transfers were for January to December. The transfers were 127. I guess it's a billion. 127,753. Now, the budget, because that was the actual, it was less than what was budgeted. But we were hopeful in 2025 that the budget would be adhered to, it would be respected, it would be delivered on. And the budget for 2025, knowing the importance of councils across the board, was 344 billion. But what actually happened, 2025, okay? January to December, we're now in December. What actually happened was that we know that there was a supplementary budget done. And in the supplementary budget, the budget was revised downwards.
I know because I listened to budget advocacy network band. We're actually advocating for councils because disbursement of funds was quite challenging.
Well, let's look at the budget first. First, you have a budget of 344 across all of our councils, 344 billion. It then gets revised down in July to 287 billion. Guess what? There's no engagement with councils. So you've got a budget. You're expecting that you're going to be working with these amounts of money. for tide grants, because that's the other thing I need us to be clear on. This is not the money that mayor will use to sweep the streets. This is, well, there's an element of sanitation there, but it would last us 2 months. This is not the money that mayor would use to dig water wells. No. This is not that money. This is not the money that we would use to build a bridge. That's not that money. This is tide grants, money that is used for the 2 hospitals, Lumley Hospital and Macaulay Street Hospital. This is money that is used for education. There isn't enough for every school. If you divide it by the schools under our watch, there'd be like 1,000 leones for each one per term. So clearly it's not done that way. You try and do something significant, maybe build tables and chairs for a number of schools, a handful of schools. You've got to pick and choose because the funds are just not sufficient. But that budget was revised down. But even with the revision down, what was our reality? Freetown City Council's budget for 2025 was 20,984,000,000. That's a fiscal transfer the government put in the budget that FCC would receive. To date, we've received 5 billion. So when I say there's a relationship between the economic outlook, the economic situation and the council situation, this is what is meant by that. Why? It's meant by that because if our budget was 20 and you give us 5, something has to give. I spoke to one of the doctors in one of the hospitals I've just mentioned and asked, I know, but we had a conversation about it. What does that mean in practical terms? It means cleaners are not paid. It means there's no reagents in the labs, so they can't do any testing of pregnant women, of children under 5. It means that some of the drugs that they would purchase are not purchased. It means that the tables and chairs that we had planned to build and provide schools with are not done. It means that some of the work with persons with disability, which Happy Disability Day to all our persons with disability, all our family members who are supporting persons with disability, and all of us, because persons with disability are part of us. We're all Freetonians. Definitely. Happy Persons with Disability Day International. So it means that these things don't happen, but it also puts, it also sort of raises big questions because, and let me just read a couple of the headlines from that report. So it says the overall deficit, that is the difference between what the government spends and what the government earns, widened to 5.1% of GDP. That is really significant. And this is reporting on 2024. But what was disturbing for me, particularly, was saying that this is for the 4th consecutive year, and it's driven by large capital expenditure overruns. We're in a city where there's been no road maintenance. We're in a city where there's been no capital investment, but we're the capital city. And you know, it really sort of makes one wonder what the priorities are. Because if our budget at the council level is not being delivered, if the disbursements aren't being made, not just to Freetown City Council, but this is across the entire country, that 5 billion that was received out of the 20 billion for 2025, that 5 billion received in August of this year, if you look at the numbers, it's actually the rollover from the last quarter of 2024 that wasn't paid, and now it's paid in 2025. But if you think about it that way, it means for the whole of 2025, today is the 3rd of December. For the whole of 2025, there has been no disbursements. But why? Because the government, it says, has had large capital overruns, capital expenditure overruns. And it also goes on to say the public financial management systems are underdeveloped. Practices do not live up to the promise of the law, causing expenditures to routinely exceed revenues, and then they put it in inverted commas, bad spending to go unchecked. The local councils the local councils are operating within this context. And this context is not just about the public financial management. The report also mentions the impact of all of this on the private sector, because you had begun to say...
It's the World Bank, the World Bank report.
This is the World Bank Economic Update 2020. Yeah, the one published just last month.
Because I know, because like you initially mentioned about why the council is concerned into this, but also, you know, people might want to ask, you know, and I know it's a challenge even if council, you know, collected, you know, taxes, property
but
taxes
I want to come on to the impact on day-to-day people.
Okay.
Because one of the things that it talks about is the strangulation of the private sector. Who pays business license? Who pays business license? The private sector.
Yeah.
And it's one of the really striking quotes in this report, and I really took the time to read it in detail. But one of the really striking quotes is how it relates to the private sector, and I'll just read it here. And it says that there are two things which mention the private sector quite specifically in the opening. The first one is that there is effectively an absence of a vibrant private sector. So think about it. Property rates, business license are paid by private sector. Property rates are paid by individuals. When people are struggling, compliance levels are down, because you have a situation where we're told here access to finance, land, electricity, skills, and regulatory inefficiencies, coupled with chronic macroeconomic instability and underdeveloped trade and competition frameworks, all pose systemic constraints. Basically, it's saying for the private business person, because they say we actually are dominated by micro enterprises. The small and medium-sized businesses are really struggling. And those small and medium-sized businesses, it says here that the whole financial system, our banking sovereign nexus, continues to weigh on the private sector, weigh on private sector lending, and poses a risk to macroeconomic stability. What does that mean? It means that they come and explain it. They say that government is crowding out the private sector because they buy the treasury bills. They issue the treasury bills rather. And it's easier for the banks to invest in that than to give credit to Remy who wants to start a business, and that business would create jobs. It also talks about the fact that because the economy is so stifled, the job creation that we need for the economy to grow isn't happening. It's estimated that 75,000 jobs will be needed a year. We have about 41,000. So you see the implications. We're not in a vacuum. Council is not operating in some other country. We're operating in this country. So what is happening in terms of the economy in this country is going to affect our residents. It's going to affect our residents. We are also seeing huge pressure. The investments outside of Freetown are not happening. I've often said, when this conversation came up about dividing Freetown, my suggestion was start a new capital city. Have an administrative capital. Do an Abuja. Do a Yamoussoukro. You know, draw people. If Mamama Airport had not been cancelled, trust me, the overpopulation we're seeing in Freetown would not have happened. We would have seen a move, we would have seen economic activity outside the capital. The challenges of local councils, largely have their root in failed national policies. Whether it's failure to devolve absolutely critical functions like land use planning and building permits, where today we have construction in waterways, we have construction in hills, we have landslides, we have floods. Whether it's that, or whether, like I've just said, it's failure to invest outside of the capital. Failure to make it easier for me to get my driving license, you know, anywhere in Sierra Leone. Even to get NACRA ID card is challenging. So outside of the capital is where the emphasis of government should be. I mean, I've seen that some progress has been made, of course. You know, even yesterday when I was in an interview and I was saying where government has done well, I don't shy away from saying one thing that I'll always applaud this government for is the GUI Act. Getting that through is a major plus, you know, major tick. But then having a situation where the World Bank describes our economy and our management in this way: weak budget execution systems, poor internal controls, and insufficient auditing are glaring symptoms of an overall lack of transparency and poor executive accountability. I think this is something that the government needs to address. And it comes back to councils. As you rightly said, there is pressure on councils to resource mobilize, and we are doing so. I've just explained to you that contrary to the situation with most other local councils, the majority of our budget comes from own source revenue, way more than is even the international norm, the global norm for industrialized developed countries who have big bases, big customer, big resident bases, the ability of New York, the ability of Nairobi. Nairobi is also at 50% from their government, and they've got industrialization, they've got strong economy, they've got you know, a booming private sector in Nairobi, but they still receive that support from the central government. And it's a question not of, I would say, it's a question of prioritization. It's a question of what really matters. Because in that same supplementary budget, where our budget was reduced, the Office of the Chief Minister's budget was increased, the Office of the President's budget was increased. So where are the priorities when it comes to delivering for the people? Should it not be with the entities that have been tasked with the responsibility of making sure there are reagents in the hospitals so that children's, you know, malaria results can be obtained?
I know all of these concerns you are raising, Madam Mayor, but also councils who have a pivotal role to play in all of these. And, you know, like you even mentioned from the reports, you know, which says that council need to put more effort in terms of revenue mobilization.
We're already mobilizing more revenue. That's what I'm trying to tell you.
Yeah.
As a whole, on average, 80 to 90% of the budgets of councils, on average, come from central government. So Freetown City Council is not the average. We only have 23 to 25% of our budget coming from the national government. So we are demonstrating the exact thing that is being, you know, what we call it, promoted. The councils.
But government is saying council can raise money on their own.
But we can, and that's what we're doing.
Running their affairs.
We can, and that's what we're doing.
So,
but we can.
They're supporting councils, not only Freetown City Council, but also councils with. Yesterday, that was what Dingy said.
Please tell me.
You know, when I asked him about you know, collaboration and what could be the role of council, because I heard, you know, sometimes back held a meeting with councils, you know, across, you know, with regards to revenue mobilization, and he said yes, you know, because that is part of how, you know, to encourage the council to raise revenue on their own in terms of supporting some of their projects. Government cannot do everything,
of course,
you know, but he said even though commended, like I said, councils of progress made in terms of revenue mobilization, but also money to be done. That is why the 2026 budgets, they are a bit increment, you know, in terms of supporting councils as well.
Sorry, there's an increment?
Yes, that was what he said in 2026 budgets, you know, by the government. But also what I'm saying is that, you know, I know it's challenging because what Dingy accepted yesterday was, as a country, we're still struggling with the economy because he said for a year, you know, there have not been international support in terms of getting money, but government depend currently on local you know, revenue mobilization, you know, in supporting some of the projects salaries and all of that. But also, while we are facing all of these challenges, and from that report from World Bank, it stated that we still struggle with our economy. And but people might want to say council also, will be creating other projects, like the parking space,
and we're doing that,
across Freetown.
And we're doing that.
And we see people are just parking randomly, so without any structure as well.
I believe you were here when the mayor of Zurich came. And you know that the project that the mayor of Zurich, the city of Zurich has funded, and so that's another example. So with council, with this Freetown City Council, we have revenue from actually 3 sources, because we have the own source revenue, which I've just described, is almost 80%. In our case, we're the flip, we're the opposite of the average council. Almost 80%. And that's something that I've done under my leadership. When I came into council in 2018, own source revenue was 43%. It's now at almost 80%. That growth is come through the innovations that I've brought in through my leadership. So you've got the own source, you've got the fiscal transfers, which are there on paper, but sadly, this year being a case in point, has not materialized in practice. And then you've got external funding. So one thing that I have done, and when you talk about the car parking, in order to actually be able to mobilize that revenue, revenue mobilization requires investment. So before you can actually get revenue from a car parking system, you must build a car parking system. That capital is required. That capital isn't coming from the central government. That capital is not coming from our own source revenue. And I'll come on again, because I think there's a point I'm wanting to get across that I haven't quite gotten you to understand, but I'll come back to it. That capital has largely come from me being able to, with team members, resource mobilize externally to be able to get investments to generate revenue. So whether it's the car parking system, which we are doing, and there is collaboration, and I will say that sometimes monkey one boxy and shot, or na chalky one boxy and shot. I know that the FS is hugely supportive of local councils, and the Fiscal Decentralization Division, which is the department within the Ministry of Finance that works with councils, they are hugely supportive of local councils. Sometimes, I have been told many times over the course of this year, we can't give that, we can't do. I know they want to, but the money no dey. That is what this report is telling us. And the reason why I think there should be a check here is because the money no dey, but there are challenges, because it says fiscal performance remains a key vulnerability. Weak fiscal discipline. That word discipline means saying that's something you can do for improve. Characterized by significant and recurrent budgetary overruns, threatens to jeopardize macroeconomic stability and sustainability. There's also a section where they talk about our foreign exchange. And they said the foreign exchange, we're using our foreign exchange money to fund overseas trips. It's actually in the report. To finance and support, this increased number of overseas embassies, of embassies. These are decisions. This is about prioritization. So in the end, the money, what I read from the report is that decisions are being taken, spending is going, and the other that was mentioned under that foreign exchange reserve was paying the car power ship. It said independent power producers, but we all know it's the car power ship. So decisions are being taken on spending, international trips, and before anybody says, "Oh, Mayor, you're always traveling." I've actually got my team. Me a data mama. I've actually got my team to tally all my trips since 2018. And I won't give you the number now, but I can tell you it is a fraction. I understand that because I always talk about what I do, that maybe in people's minds, it's more than it is. But trust me, when the time is right, I will put that data out.
I know.
But coming back very quickly on this, because I know you've got another guest. Very quickly on this, what I see, what the report states, is the government has failed. failed in fiscal discipline, failed in monetary policies, failed in prioritizing, and as a consequence, we've got a situation where the private sector is struggling. The banks are not investing in the private sector because it's more profitable and safer to just buy treasury bills, and so the economy continues to be strangulated. Job creation is not at pace, and as a consequence, for us, that deficit of 5.1% between what of GDP of what our revenue is and expenditure is impacting the councils because we're not prioritized, because the transfers to us to the local councils have not happened. Other transfers have happened, but they've not happened. Yes, we can resource mobilize, and indeed we're doing so, but we're doing so in an economy that's suppressed. Usai possibly not getting for it, because we also read that 82% of our population are food insecure, and 50% plus are now living below the poverty line. You cannot take blood out of a stone. You cannot take water out of a stone. So if this is what the national situation is, then we can't pretend that we are working in some sort of utopia at the city level where the resources that are not there. I mean, NRA has done well from what we've seen in this year, but as one question that's been asked is, do you just keep taxing, or do you have a strategy for economic growth? And that's the growth strategy that we're not seeing. And that's the growth strategy that we need, because for there to be a thriving economy across the country, there needs to be policy decisions, prioritization, fiscal discipline, which according to this report is currently lacking. And that directly impacts on the local councils.
All right, I know we're trying to round up this conversation, but also you are very interested in the young people, and I know you are challenged sometimes back by the local governments with regards data, and, which was released by your team with regards to the kush, fight of young people who are dying for kush. But also, how is that impact the economy? Like you mentioned, before we even came to the World Bank economic update reports, you were saying that there are guys who are kush guys who are actually taking money. I'm gonna throw your debts and all of that, and they decided to do up on the state, and it's also a challenge as well. But how are we going to ensure we address that? Because I know it has escalated across Sierra Leone. The issue of drugs, young people are taking it, and it's weakening the economy, because those who are supposed to work, they cannot work anymore. But what we should do as a nation now, in addressing this situation and getting back the young people to know that it's their responsibility, to develop the nation.
Somebody asked me this question yesterday. They said their question was, what do I think, it's similar to what you're saying, what do I think needs to be done? Is it a question of, young people not having jobs and therefore going into drug addiction? I would disagree. I would say, as I've said many times, and I'll continue to say, that for me, the challenge is a supply challenge. There's a situation in Sierra Leone, I think I read recently, you probably saw the same article, that most of the ingredients that are required to make kush, the majority of them are not in this country. They have to be brought in. So if we have a situation where we seem to have an unending supply of the ingredients, then we have a challenge. We have a challenge. We have a security challenge. We have an enforcement challenge. We have a political will challenge. Because ultimately, the case of the lady who was jailed, was it this week or last week? The woman selling kush at Prince of Wales School. She was like a food vendor, but she was also selling kush. That is an example of something that is happening across the country, every corner, every market, pretty much all institutions. The availability of the drugs is so widespread. That's where I see the need for a change in direction. For me, we must treat those who have become addicts and try and save their lives. Yes, the rehabilitation centers must be financed, they must be manned, they must be staffed. That's right. We must continue to give out messages of education, messages to encourage young people not to be tempted. But what I think we must do, which is even more important, we must break the supply chain. We must hold responsible those who are bringing these drugs into this country. When you arrest the woman at Prince of Wales School, she must tell you who her supplier is. He must tell you who his supplier is, and so on, till we get to the top of this. Because this is not something that is going to stop by us arresting and jailing the small guys, the small fish. This is organized crime. This is big money. One of an issue that I find increasingly distressing is the level of what I would describe as unusual economic activity. We've just read a report, you know, all of us, many of us have read the report, which has talked about the state of our formal economy. It's in dire states. But yet there's an informal economy, which appears to be fueled by narcotics, which is booming. We see construction all over the place. We see fancy cars. How are these being paid for? This is something that should be a challenge for us all, to take this seriously. To take this seriously, to know that human capital development is not about fancy words, but it's about real change. Every single young person, I've got videos, I'll be posting them today, because I told my team, guys, we need people to see what these young addicts are doing with their garbage. When you give Dotty to Possin, and then he's walking around with bandages on his foot, he's walking around just like this, you know, Remy, you know that person is not going to go to King Tom Bome. You know they're not going to go. You know full well it's going to end up on the street. And then we'll all say Freetown Dotty. We're building a system with Dotty Must Go, with household service providers. I'm being told, and that's why I'm going to be doing this video later, that some people are saying, hey, too dear. What is the cost to you? What is the real cost? The cost of council. Yesterday, my ESO, head of sanitation, she was almost in tears. They had worked all night, and then in the morning, the whole of the median in Poti along the Baibura Road was littered. And she was like, whose kind of wickedness these white people, then they do so. She spent the entire day again.
PZ as well.
This is a new trend. Let me think about it. 6 months ago, were you seeing that?
No.
You weren't. So what is going on? Why are we doing this? I mean, the guys are out there, but it's up to us to say yes or no. Use the approved waste service providers. Not give Dotty to clean salon guy. I'm calling them clean salon because I don't want to call them kush guys. I don't like that name.
Is it a level of awareness, you know what I mean, from
Let me just quickly, there's a level of awareness, but there's also a level of complicity. The same thing, you were talking about, oh, mayor, you can charge. You know what our compliance is? We charge property rate. Our compliance level at the moment is at less than 50%. It's at 49% for the last year. That means Freetonians are receiving their demand notes and going, I know they pay. I gotta go. I know they pay. You know, and of course we're doing enforcement, but you know, enforcement is also requires financial resources.
Because I want to ask about the new Enforcement Act by cancel out activities.
You mean the Sanitation Act?
Yeah, the Sanitation Act.
Yes,
well.
and so the Sanitation Act is there. And now we've spent several months now informing residents and making sure the awareness is there. And now we're moving on to enforcement. Okay. So you know, from this December into January, we'll start to now charge you the fine. you know. But we've given people time to understand that this is the system. We've also given time to service providers because, you know, they're also new in the space, and they're having to build up their own, you know, sort of processes of waste collection. But, you know, they did sign a contract with us. They did say they were up to this, so we're holding them also accountable.
Okay, it appears as if I don't know whether people are complacent about issues of the dots they talk about. You know, sometimes I'm a little lonely, you know, towards the lights box. You know, a huge pile of you know, dots at that place there. And I even asked the guy who change the dollar. You know, I say, but why dotty bokura? They say, Brian, I don't know what in the country dotty. You know, people see them. See them.
Thank you.
I don't know what is the problem.
No one's prepared to stop them. I mean, look, even with my Met Police, I said to them, you're not fining these guys. You're not charging them to court. They said, Mayor, the state and condition of the guys them, for even all them, you know, because in many cases they're ill.
Yeah.
Some of them have mental challenges, you know, physically, you know, sort of physical disability, ailments that you can see. You know, many of them, the sores on their legs. It's a difficult situation. But we have written yesterday, we wrote yesterday to the IG, we wrote 2 letters. One, asking him to support us with detention facilities, because we don't have detention facilities. And so it's more difficult when you've got somebody in that sort of state to be able to hold on to them for a while before you charge them to court. But we have to find a solution because they are out of control. And the second letter was with regards to the Christmas festivities, because many people are now going to want to do parties on the street, and you will litter the streets and you will walk away. So we are asking the IG to make sure that before a clearance is given to anybody wanting to do any festivities on the streets of Freetown, they must first come to council so we can make arrangements with them for ensuring that they don't leave a mess behind that they haven't paid for and expect council to come and clear. I know,
Madam Mayor, and probably, I don't know, maybe we can get another interview with you before closing the year, but if not, maybe you might want to speak to...
Oh, no, I'll be back before the end of the year. I'm not saying Happy Christmas just yet. Today's only the 3rd of December. We go talk before January.
So we can look at the plans for council
for 2026.
2026.
And look back on 2025.
Definitely, we're going to review because that's what we're planning to do. Well, thank you very much, Madam Mayor, for being part of this.
Always a pleasure. And I mean, we came, like I said, I'm hoping that this just helps us to understand that there is a connection, that the state of the national economy, when the national economy is underperforming, when there's lack of fiscal discipline, when there are overspends, when there's lack of transparency, the impact is one that rest heavily on local councils, because if local councils are not prioritized and funds are not transferred to local councils, even though councils like myself, like Freetown City Council, are able to generate revenue, you have 21 other councils in the country. Councils who rely on government for 80 to 90% of their revenue will find themselves unable to function. So it is critical that government addresses the issues that were raised in the report, that they follow through with the recommendations, but that they also respect the space of council, because we're dealing with a challenge right now where our finance officer is being transferred in the middle of the year-end processes and being replaced by the intention is to replace the finance officer of the capital city, the capital city with the biggest budget, with the most complicated systems, digital systems, replace that officer with a finance officer from Pujaun district who's been there for 7 years, whose budget is 2 billion a year, who doesn't work on mob tax, doesn't work on PFM Smart. So you then begin to think to yourself, if there is real commitment to the growth of local councils, to the financial performance of local councils, does that sort of transfer make sense? Or are these things being done with a political lens? Is this to destabilize Freetown City Council? Because it doesn't seem like a logical move, but it's something that we've been discussing, we've raised up, and we are really continuing to have that conversation, because you can't say one thing and do another. You can't say you want to see councils strong and then you bring a finance officer, not even from one of the secondary cities, but from a rural district that has never worked with the complex systems that Freetown City Council is working with. You want to insist on having that change during the most challenge. Everybody knows year ends is the most challenging time for the finance department. You want to impose that now? Is that about financial management? Is that about strengthening the local councils, or is this about weakening the local council? It strikes me that it's the latter, particularly given the level of energy that has gone into it. Another point is that, you know, when we raise issues, the Local Government Act says the councils in Section 42, councils in collaboration with the local council, in collaboration with the Local Government Service Commission, are responsible for recruitment, for discipline, for retirement. It misses the word transfer, but it's clear that the heart of it, it's clear that the sentiment is these people coming to your council are working for you. You as the council must be involved in who comes to work for you, because you know what the work is. You know what needs to be done. You understand who's there. So if we have a situation such as we have now, where the councillors, the deputy mayor, myself, we've all expressed our dissatisfaction with the level of performance of the current CA, and we've written to the Local Government Service Commission to ask that he be transferred. I find it really bizarre that we have a situation where the Ministry of Local Government is stepping in and saying to the Local Government Service Commission, don't deal with it, we're handling it. We are here to build the councils in order to deliver services. If there are issues and there are challenges that are being seen in service delivery, they should be addressed, not through a political lens, not through eyes of control and power, but putting the residents of the city first. And I have, you know, I think this is a conversation that needs to continue. Local councils, generally LOCASO, we really see that this is an attempt of continuing to have decentralization in word only, on paper. Because if your core staff, you have no input into who comes and who goes, and yet you're the one running the council, how can you just say somebody who has no experience, you who at the ministry, you haven't come to look at what we're doing, you haven't engaged us, you don't understand what's happening, you are standing miles away and instructing that this person comes here, that person goes there. It's not just me, Kainlaun, Kenema, Cambia. They all have the same challenge, and we're all talking about it. And we want to say, government has a lot to do to improve its financial position. Focusing on destabilizing the local councils is not a good move. Leave the local councils to be able to run our affairs. That was the intention of the act. In collaboration, of course, with the Local Government Service Commission, but not in the reverse. Not in a situation where what we experience, we who are hands-on, we who are here, we who are living and understand what's going on in our councils, we're not consulted, we're not engaged, we're not informed. No, that is not a recipe for success. It's a recipe for disaster. The World Bank's economic update gives a lot of food for thought, but it gives a lot of work for government to do. At the same time, we as councils are impacted. We can work together, we should work together, but we should do so in a way which strengthens the councils and doesn't weaken them at a time when the government's financial management services have been exposed as being weak.
All right, Madam Mayor, thank you very much for being part of the show. We'll definitely get you again as we close the year to review 2025 and look at the council, you know, plans for 2026. Thank you very much for being part of the show. It's always a pleasure having the city mayor, you know, here in our studio as well. There are so many complimentary messages from our Facebook page followers. You know, she's a strong woman, articulating all of that, and also some of the concerns, you know, she has already spoken about that. Someone was asking about you know, the garbage at PZ and all other places as well. She has said a team are working towards that.
Sorry, can I just quickly say, we're going to do, we've started night operations.
Okay.
We need to arrest the people who are doing this.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you very much, Madam Mayor, for being part of the show.